The bar on Vexthar Prime was filled with creatures from a dozen different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed faintly in the dim light. They all drank, gambled, and talked in the universal language of soldiers and traders. In the corner booth sat a human, and that was enough to make the other patrons nervous. Jake Morrison didn't look particularly dangerous at first glance. He was average height for a human, with dark hair that needed cutting and tired eyes that had seen too much. But everyone in the bar knew who he was. They had heard the stories. The human who had taken down a Krallian warband single-handedly. The human who had survived 3 days in the death wastes of Zorath without water. The human who never ever gave up. Jake sipped his drink and tried to ignore the stares. He had just finished a job tracking down smugglers in the Outer Rim, and all he wanted was to get paid and find a quiet place to sleep. The galaxy had become a strange place for humans since they joined the interstellar community 20 years ago. Other species expected them to be monsters or heroes, never just people trying to get by. A messenger droid rolled up to his table, projecting a hologram of an elegant alien woman. She had blue skin that shimmered like water, and eyes that reminded Jake of Earth's old oceans. Her voice was smooth and formal. "Captain Morrison, Emperor Voshkal of the Caldronian Empire, request your services. A diplomatic convoy was attacked 3 days ago. The raiders took Imperial artifacts and killed 6 guards. The Emperor wants you to find them and bring back what was stolen." Jake finished his drink. "I charge double for recovery missions. The Emperor is aware of your rates. He has already transferred the advance payment to your account. Time is critical, Captain. Will you accept?" Jake thought about saying no. The Caldronians were proud warrior people who looked down on humans for not fighting with honor. Working for them usually meant dealing with insults and complaints about his methods. But the money was good and he needed to repair his ship. "Send me the details. I'll leave in an hour." The hologram bowed and disappeared. Jake stood up, dropped a few credits on the table, and headed for the door. Behind him, the other patrons started talking again, their voices a mix of relief and fascination. Halfway across the galaxy, in the grand palace of the Caldronian Empire, Princess Lyra Henth sat in her private chamber and watched the news feeds. The attack on the convoy had shaken the entire empire. Her father, the Emperor, was furious. He had sent his best warriors to find the raiders, but they had found nothing. The trails went cold, the witnesses were dead, and the artifacts were still missing. Then someone had suggested hiring the human. Lyra had heard about humans before. Everyone had. They were the newest species to join galactic society, and they were terrifying. Humans came from a death world where everything tried to kill them. They had evolved to be endurance hunters, chasing their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could survive injuries that would kill most other species. They fought with creativity and madness, using tactics that no honorable warrior would consider. And Jake Morrison was supposed to be the worst of them all. She pulled up his file on her personal screen. The image showed a tired-looking man with old scars and cold eyes. The list of his accomplishments was disturbing. He had single-handedly stopped a prison riot on Gamma Station. He had tracked a serial killer through the toxic jungles of Viridian 3. He had survived ambushes, poison, starvation, and wounds that should have been fatal. The reports described his methods as unconventional and disturbing. He used psychological warfare, setting up elaborate traps and making his enemies afraid before he ever confronted them. He would pretend to be wounded to lure attackers close, then strike from nowhere. He carried weapons that other species considered primitive or crude, but he used them with deadly efficiency. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of species produced people like this? What kind of world forced them to become such efficient killers? Her handmaiden, Sarah, entered the chamber with fresh tea. "You look troubled, Princess." Father hired the human warrior. "Jake Morrison." Sarah's expression darkened. "I have heard the stories. They say he once killed a Draxian enforcer using only a piece of broken glass in his bare hands. They say many things about humans. I don't know what to believe. Perhaps you should be grateful he works for us rather than against us." Lyra nodded, but the uneasy feeling remained. She had spent her whole life in the palace protected by the best warriors in the Empire. She had never faced real danger, never had to fight for her survival. The idea of someone like Morrison existing in the same galaxy made her feel small and helpless. 2 days later, Jake found the raiders. They had hidden their base in an asteroid field, thinking no one would track them through the dangerous rocks and debris. But Jake had learned tracking from the best hunters on Earth, and he had adapted those skills to work in space. He followed the ion trails, analyzed the shipping routes, and narrowed down the possibilities until only one remained. He approached the asteroid base alone, in a small scout ship that barely registered on sensors. He docked at an abandoned mining port and made his way inside, moving through the dark corridors like a shadow. The raiders were mercenaries from 3 different species, well-armed and confident. They had set up guards and security systems, sure that no one could find them. Jake avoided the guards, disabled the alarms, and made his way to the storage area where the stolen artifacts were kept. He photographed everything, sending the evidence back to his ship with automated messages set to go to the Emperor if Jake didn't return. Then he waited. When the raiders discovered the security breach, they panicked. Jake used their confusion against them, making noises in empty corridors, cutting power to different sections, leaving messages that made them suspect each other. By the time they realized they were being hunted by a single human, half of them had already fled and the others were too scared to fight effectively. Jake recovered the artifacts and left the base before reinforcements could arrive. He jumped to hyperspace and set course for Caldronian space, already composing his mission report. It had been a clean job, relatively speaking. No one had died, and he had what the Emperor wanted. He had no idea that this simple recovery mission would change his entire life. Jake stood in the grand throne room of the Caldronian palace, feeling out of place among the marble columns and golden decorations. Emperor Voshkal sat on his massive throne, looking pleased. The Emperor was huge even for a Caldronian, with thick armor-like skin and eyes that glowed a deep amber. Around him stood his advisors and warriors, all watching Jake with expressions ranging from respect to barely hidden disgust. The recovered artifacts were displayed on a ceremonial table. Ancient weapons and religious items that meant more to the Caldronians than their weight in credits. The Emperor had examined each one personally before turning his attention back to Jake. "You have done well, human. Better than my own warriors, I must admit. The raiders never knew what hit them." Jake nodded. "Just doing the job, Your Majesty. If you could transfer the remaining payment, I'll be on my way." "Patience, Captain Morrison. I wish to discuss another matter with you, one of great importance to the Empire." Jake felt a warning tingle at the base of his skull. Nothing good ever came from emperors wanting to discuss important matters. Voshkal gestured to one of his advisors, an elderly Caldronian with ceremonial robes. "As you may know, humanity has become a significant power in our region of space. Your species is young, aggressive, and unpredictable. Some in the Galactic community fear you. Others seek to control you. I prefer a different approach, which is alliance partnership. A joining of our peoples that would benefit both our civilizations." Jake had a bad feeling about where this was going. "I'm a mercenary, not a diplomat, Your Majesty." "Indeed. Which is precisely why you are perfect for what I propose." The Emperor leaned forward. "In 3 months we will host a gathering of the major powers. During this time I intend to announce a marriage between my daughter, Princess Lyra Nth, and a suitable human representative. This union will cement the alliance between our peoples." Several human candidates were presented on holographic displays. Politicians, diplomats, corporate leaders, all of them looked uncomfortable in their formal clothing, trying too hard to appear impressive to alien eyes. Jake relaxed slightly. "I'm sure you'll find someone appropriate. Good luck with that." "You misunderstand, Captain. I am not asking you to recommend someone. I am offering you the position." Jake stared at the Emperor. For a long moment he thought he had misheard. "You want me to marry your daughter?" "Yes, that's insane. I'm not qualified for anything like that. I'm a soldier, a bounty hunter. I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy." "You know how to survive," Voshkal said firmly. "You know how to adapt, to overcome obstacles, to achieve impossible goals. These are the qualities I want in my daughter's husband. These are the qualities that will make this alliance strong." Before Jake could respond, the doors to the throne room burst open. Alarms started blaring. Security guards rushed in, forming a protective circle around the Emperor. Through the chaos, Jake heard weapons fire and screaming. Separatists had infiltrated the palace. The human security detail that had been assigned to the diplomatic section was pinned down in the corridor outside. Jake could see them through the doorway, trying to hold their position against attackers with better weapons and armor. The Caldronian guards moved to intercept, but they were ceremonial troops not prepared for a real assault. Jake's training kicked in automatically. He scanned the throne room, assessing angles and cover. He grabbed a decorative spear from the wall and threw it with perfect accuracy, taking down an attacker who had been aiming at the Emperor. Then he was moving, using the marble columns for cover, picking up a fallen guard's weapon. The attackers had expected confusion and panic. They had not expected a human who had spent years fighting for his survival. Jake used everything around him as a weapon. He kicked over braziers, creating smoke and fire. He threw ceremonial ornaments with deadly accuracy. He moved in ways that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated to put enemies off balance. When he ran out of ammunition, he improvised with pieces of broken furniture and his own brutal hand-to-hand combat skills. In less than 5 minutes, the attack was over. The separatists were either dead or fleeing. Jake stood in the center of the throne room, breathing hard and covered in blood that wasn't his own. The Caldronian guard stared at him in shock and awe. Emperor Voshikal laughed, a deep booming sound. "Did you see that? Did you all see what this human did? While my own warriors stood frozen, he saved us all. This is the kind of strength I want in my family." Jake tried to catch his breath. "Your Majesty, this doesn't change anything. I'm still not the right person for a political marriage. You are exactly the right person, and I have made my decision." The Emperor's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "In 1 month you will marry my daughter. The alliance will be sealed. This is not a request, Captain Morrison. You are bound by contract to serve my interests, and this serves my interests." Jake opened his mouth to argue, but he knew it was useless. He had signed a contract, and the Emperor was technically right. He was trapped. From a balcony overlooking the throne room, Princess Lyranth had watched the entire attack. She had seen Jake fight with her own eyes, seen the brutal efficiency with which he eliminated threats. She had seen him use tactics that made her stomach turn, tricks and deceptions that no Caldronian warrior would ever employ, and now her father wanted her to marry him. She ran from the balcony, her heart pounding with fear. She found her father in his private chambers an hour later, still celebrating Jake's victory. "Father, please," she begged, dropping to her knees before him. "Please don't make me do this." "Choose someone else." "Anyone else?" Voshkal looked at his daughter with surprise. "What troubles you?" "Morrison is a hero. He saved my life, saved all our lives. He's a monster, Father. Did you see how he fought? He has no honor, no mercy. He kills like a predator from the old stories." "Not him, Father. I'm afraid of that human warrior." The Emperor's expression hardened. "You are afraid because you have never faced real danger. You have been sheltered your whole life. Perhaps this marriage is exactly what you need. Morrison will teach you strength, but Father, enough. My decision is made. You will marry the human in 1 month. Use this time to prepare yourself. That is my final word." Lyra left her father's chambers with tears in her eyes. In 1 month she would be bound to a creature from her nightmares. A human who fought like a demon and seemed to feel no fear. She had seen vids of Earth, the Deathworld where humans came from. A planet where every animal was a potential killer, where the weather could change from beautiful to deadly in minutes, where survival meant constant vigilance. And humans had not just survived there. They had thrived, becoming the dominant species through sheer stubborn refusal to die. Jake Morrison was the product of that world, shaped by violence and hardship into something that terrified her. In his temporary quarters, Jake sat on his bunk and stared at the wall. He had fought pirates, criminals, and monsters. He had survived impossible situations and completed missions that should have killed him. But somehow, an arranged marriage to an alien princess seemed like the most dangerous challenge he had ever faced. The next 2 weeks were uncomfortable for everyone involved. Jake was given quarters in the palace and a schedule of events designed to help him and Lyra get acquainted. Cultural lessons, formal dinners, ceremonial appearances. Jake hated every minute of it. Lyra avoided him whenever possible. When they were forced to be in the same room, she would stand as far away as she could and barely speak. Her fear was obvious, and it frustrated Jake more than he wanted to admit. He had never asked for this arrangement. He didn't want to marry someone who looked at him like he was a monster. During their third formal dinner together, Jake finally had enough. They were sitting at opposite ends of a long table, surrounded by servants and guards eating in complete silence. "This is ridiculous," Jake said, setting down his fork. If you're that afraid of me, just tell your father you won't go through with it. Lyra's eyes widened. No one spoke to her so bluntly. You don't understand our customs. When the Emperor makes a decision, it is final. Then at least talk to me. I'm not going to hurt you. You killed 6 armed attackers in less than 5 minutes, without any weapons of your own. I was protecting your father. Protecting you, actually, since you were watching from that balcony. Lyra flinched. She hadn't realized he had seen her. The way you fought, it was terrifying. You have no honor, Jake laughed bitterly. Honor is a luxury for people who don't have to worry about survival. Where I come from, dead heroes don't get remembered. Only living ones do. You speak as if violence is the only answer. It's not. But when violence finds you, you better be ready to answer back twice as hard. That's how humans stayed alive long enough to reach the stars. They finished the meal in silence, but something had shifted slightly. Lyra was still afraid, but now she was also curious. The breaking point came during the ceremonial hunt. It was a Caldronian tradition meant to bond couples before marriage. They would be taken to a preserve filled with dangerous game, accompanied by skilled warriors, and hunt together. It was supposed to build trust and partnership. Jake and Lyra were transported to the wilderness preserve with 6 elite guards. The forest was beautiful, filled with massive trees and strange flowers. But Jake could feel that something was wrong. His instincts, honed by years of combat, were screaming warnings. We should head back, he said to the guard captain. The hunt has just begun. Are you afraid, human? Before Jake could respond, the attack came. Weapons fire from 3 different directions. The guards tried to form a defensive position, but the attackers had chosen their ambush point perfectly. Within seconds, all 6 guards were down. Jake grabbed Lyra and ran. He didn't think, didn't plan. He just moved, pulling her into the dense forest as energy bolts burned the air around them. Behind them, he could hear the attackers giving chase. They ran for what felt like hours. Jake kept them moving, changing direction randomly, using every trick he knew to throw off pursuit. Lyra stumbled and fell twice, but Jake pulled her up and kept going. Finally, when he was sure they had lost their pursuers, he found a cave hidden behind a waterfall and dragged her inside. Lyra collapsed, gasping for breath. She had never run like that before, never felt such pure terror. Jake checked her for injuries, his hands surprisingly gentle, then went to the cave entrance to keep watch. Who were they? Lyra asked when she could speak again. Same separatists from the palace attack, probably. They're determined to kill your father, and killing you would hurt him just as much. Jake scanned the forest, listening. We need to stay hidden until help arrives. How long will that take? Could be hours. Could be days. Depends on how long it takes them to find the bodies and organize a search party. Lyra felt panic rising in her chest. Days out here? With those killers hunting us? Better than being dead. Now be quiet. Sound carries in places like this. The first night was the hardest. Lyra had never slept anywhere except comfortable beds in secure buildings. The cave was cold and damp, and every sound made her jump. Jake barely slept, keeping watch and occasionally checking their surroundings. In the morning, he went out to find food and water. He came back with strange fruits and roots that he had tested for poison, plus a container of fresh water from the stream. Lyra stared at the food suspiciously. It's safe, Jake said. I've eaten worse. She forced herself to eat. It tasted terrible, but her hunger won over her disgust. Jake ate quickly, efficiently, like someone who had gone hungry too many times. How do you know all this? She asked. How to survive in the wild, I mean. Learned it on Earth. My grandfather taught me when I was a kid. Said everyone should know how to survive without technology just in case. Jake checked his weapons. Turned out to be useful advice. Is Earth really as dangerous as they say? Depends on where you are. But yeah, pretty much. Humans didn't evolve to be comfortable. We evolved to survive. On the second day, the attackers found them. Jake had set up traps around the cave using vines, rocks, and sharpened sticks. When the first attacker triggered a trap and went down screaming, the others became cautious. Lyra watched in horrified fascination as Jake defended their position. He didn't fight like Caldronian warriors who would charge forward with weapons blazing. Instead, he used the terrain, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. He would make noise in one direction, then attack from another. He set fires to create smoke screens. He threw rocks to make the attackers think there were more defenders than there actually were. It was brutal, efficient, and completely dishonorable by Caldronian standards. It was also incredibly effective. After the third attacker went down, the others retreated. Jake returned to the cave, breathing hard and bleeding from a cut on his arm. Lyra had medical supplies in her survival pack, and she found herself treating his wound without thinking about it. "Why do you fight like that?" she asked as she worked. "Why not face them directly?" "Because fighting fair is how you die. My job isn't to give my enemies a sporting chance. My job is to survive and complete the mission. Right now the mission is keeping you alive. But it's so dishonorable? Yeah, probably. But you're still breathing, so I'm going to call it a win." That night, as they sat by a small fire, Lyra asked the question that had been bothering her. "Why did you become a mercenary? Surely humans have other jobs you could do." Jake was quiet for a long time. "I had a family once. Wife and daughter. We were traveling on a colony ship when pirates attacked. They killed everyone on board for the cargo. I was off ship doing repairs on one of the exterior panels. I heard my wife screaming over the comm. Heard my daughter crying. And I couldn't do anything to save them." Lyra felt her breath catch. "I'm sorry. After that, I learned to fight. Really fight. Not the polite, honorable way. The way that makes sure you go home and the other guy doesn't. I've been doing it ever since. You must hate being forced into this marriage." Jake smiled sadly. "I've done a lot of things I didn't want to do. This is just one more. But for what it's worth, I don't want to scare you. I'm just trying to survive, same as everyone else." For the first time since they met, Lyra looked at Jake and didn't see a monster. She saw a man who had been broken by tragedy and rebuilt himself into something harder, something that could survive in a galaxy that didn't care about fairness or honor. On the third day, they heard ships overhead. Rescue had finally arrived. But as they prepared to signal for help, they heard different sounds. Weapons fire, shouting. The Separatists had found the rescue party first. Jake cursed. "Stay here. I need to help them." "Wait," Lyra said. She stood up, her fear replaced by determination. "I'm coming with you." "That's a terrible idea." "Perhaps. But you taught me something these past 3 days. Survival is more important than comfort, and I'm tired of being protected while others fight for me." Jake looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. But you do exactly what I say when I say it." "Understood?" "Understood." Together they moved through the forest toward the sound of battle, a human warrior and an alien princess learning to trust each other in the only way that mattered in a dangerous galaxy. The rescue party was pinned down in a clearing, taking fire from separatists hidden in the trees. Jake counted at least a dozen attackers, maybe more. The Imperial soldiers were brave but predictable, holding their ground and firing back in organized volleys. They were losing. Jake pulled Lyra behind a fallen log and whispered his plan. She listened, her eyes growing wide, but she nodded. What he proposed was insane by Caldronian standards. It also might actually work. "You want me to be bait?" she asked quietly. "Not bait. A distraction. There's a difference. I need them looking one direction while I come from another." "Can you do it?" Lyra's hands were shaking, but she gripped them into fists. "Yes, I can do it." "Good, wait for my signal. And Lyra, don't try to be brave. When I tell you to run, you run. No arguing." She smiled nervously. "No arguing. I promise." Jake moved through the forest like a shadow, using every bit of cover. He had learned stealth from the best soldiers Earth had produced, and he had refined those skills across a dozen worlds. The Separatists never saw him coming. He found their leader, a Caldronian warrior named Krostar, directing the attack from a position behind the main fighting line. Jake memorized the positions of every attacker, every angle of fire, every weakness in their formation. Then he gave Lyra the signal, a bird call that didn't quite sound right. Lyra stepped into view on the far side of the clearing, her royal robes making her impossible to miss. "I am Princess Lyra Nth," she called out, her voice carrying despite her fear. "Daughter of Emperor Voshkal. I demand you cease this attack immediately." The Separatist turned toward her voice, surprised. Even Krostar shifted his attention. It was exactly the opening Jake needed. He struck fast and hard, taking down 3 attackers before anyone realized what was happening. The rescue party used the confusion to push forward. Jake moved through the chaos, his actions calculated to create maximum disruption. He didn't try to kill everyone. He just needed to break their formation, make them panic. Krostar saw what was happening and roared orders, trying to regain control. But his soldiers were already falling back, disoriented by the sudden reversal. Within minutes, the battle was over. The surviving separatists retreated into the forest, and the clearing fell quiet except for the sounds of the wounded. The rescue party's commander, a grizzled Caldronian named Vextor, stared at Jake with something like respect. The Emperor said you were skilled? He did not mention you were also insane. Jake helped Lyra down from her hiding spot. On Earth, we have a saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. I do not understand means when everything's bad, the only way out is forward. Stopping just gets you killed. They were flown back to the palace under heavy guard. The Emperor was waiting for them, furious and relieved in equal measure. He embraced Lyra, then turned to Jake. You protected my daughter. You have my eternal gratitude. Just doing my job, Your Majesty. But we have a bigger problem. Those separatists were organized and well-equipped. Someone is funding them and providing intelligence. Voshkal's expression darkened. We will discuss this in the war room. First, both of you need medical attention and rest. Lyra found Jake later that evening in the medical wing. He was sitting on a bed while a medical droid treated his various injuries. He had refused pain medication and was stoically enduring the process. You saved my life, Lyra said from the doorway. Again, we saved each other's lives. That distraction you created was perfect. Couldn't have done it without you. She entered the room and sat in the chair beside his bed. I learned something in those 3 days. About humans. About you. What's that? That fear and bravery looked the same from the outside. You were scared too, weren't you? In the forest. Jake was quiet for a moment. Yeah, I was scared. Being scared keeps you alive. It's when you stop being scared that you make fatal mistakes. Caldronian warriors are taught to overcome fear, to fight without doubt or hesitation, but you fight because of fear, not despite it. Fear is a tool. Like any other tool, you can use it or let it use you. I choose to use it. Over the next few days, they spent more time together, not because they were forced to, but because Lyra wanted to understand. She asked Jake about Earth, about human history, about the things that shaped his species. Jake told her about the wars that had nearly destroyed Earth, about famines and plagues, about ice ages and asteroid impacts. He explained how humans had survived everything their planet threw at them through stubbornness, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept extinction. Other species evolved on stable worlds, Jake said one afternoon as they walked through the palace gardens. They had time to develop honor codes and traditions. Earth kept trying to kill us, so we learned to kill back. We learned to adapt, to use whatever worked. Honor doesn't feed your children when you're starving. It doesn't protect them from predators. So humans have no honor at all? I didn't say that. We have honor. We just define it differently. For us, honor means protecting your family, your community. It means keeping your word and standing by your friends. But it doesn't mean fighting fair against someone trying to kill you. Lyra thought about that. Your grandfather who taught you to survive. Was he a warrior? Farmer, actually. But he grew up during the resource wars when countries fought over water and farmland. He learned survival because everyone had to. Then he taught me just in case I ever needed it. And you did need it. Yeah, more than I ever wanted to. In the war room, investigations were revealing the scope of the conspiracy. Croster had been captured during a raid on a separatist base, and under interrogation, he revealed his plan. He wanted to overthrow the Emperor and blame humanity for the assassination. The resulting war would weaken both the Caldronian Empire and the human colonies, leaving them vulnerable to other powers. The wedding would be the perfect opportunity. A public ceremony with both the Emperor and his daughter present, plus human representatives. One attack could eliminate everyone important and spark the war Crostar wanted. Jake studied the security plans for the ceremony. They were extensive, but he saw weaknesses. Any plan could fail if the enemy was determined enough and lucky enough. We should postpone, he said to the Emperor. Give us time to root out all the separatist cells. No, Voshkal said firmly. That would show weakness. We proceed as planned, but with additional security measures. Measures that you will help design, Captain Morrison. Jake spent the next week working with the Imperial Guard, teaching them tactics they found uncomfortable but effective. How to set up overlapping fields of fire. How to create kill zones and fallback positions. How to think like an attacker instead of a defender. Some of the guards resented taking instruction from a human. Others listened and learned. Vextor became one of Jake's strongest supporters, recognizing that these strange tactics had practical value. Lyra watched Jake work, saw how he planned for every possibility. She realized that what she had mistaken for brutality was actually a deep commitment to survival. Jake didn't fight because he enjoyed violence. He fought because he had seen what happened when you weren't prepared, and he refused to let it happen again. One night, 3 days before the wedding, Lyra found Jake on a balcony overlooking the city. He was studying the skyline, still planning security measures even in his off hours. "Do you ever rest?" she asked. "Not when people I care about might be in danger." She was surprised. "You care about me?" Jake turned to face her. "Yeah, I do. You're brave, you're smart, and you're trying to understand a galaxy that doesn't make sense. That's worth caring about. I was terrified of you when we first met. I know. I could see it in your eyes. I'm not terrified anymore. I'm still scared sometimes, but it's different now. Now I understand what I'm seeing." "And what's that?" "Someone who has been hurt but refuses to break. Someone who turns pain into strength. Someone who protects others because he couldn't protect the ones he lost." Jake looked away, blinking against sudden emotion. "You're more perceptive than I gave you credit for." "I had a good teacher." She moved to stand beside him. "Jake, about the wedding. I know neither of us chose this, but I think we could make it work, if you're willing." He met her eyes. "I'm willing if you are, but I can't promise to be anything other than what I am. I don't want you to be anything else. I want a partner who will stand beside me when things get hard, someone who knows how to survive." She smiled slightly. "Even if his methods make me uncomfortable sometimes." "Fair enough. And who knows? Maybe I'll learn some Caldronian honor along the way. And maybe I'll learn some human stubbornness." They stood together on the balcony, looking out at the city lights, both of them thinking about the future. Neither of them knew that the worst was still to come. The day of the wedding arrived with perfect weather and terrible timing. Intelligence reports indicated that separatist cells were moving into position throughout the capital city. Crossitar had escaped custody during a prisoner transfer, killing 3 guards in the process. The ceremony would be a target, everyone knew it. But canceling would show weakness the Empire could not afford. Jake stood in his quarters, adjusting the formal uniform that represented a blend of human and Caldronian traditions. He checked his weapons one last time. The ceremonial blade at his hip was real and sharp. The small pistol hidden in his boot wasn't traditional, but Jake had given up on following all the rules. There was a knock on his door. Vextor entered looking grim. "We found 3 separatist infiltrators among the serving staff. Under questioning, they revealed the attack plan. Crosstar will strike during the ceremony itself, when security is focused on protecting the Emperor and Princess." "He'll come for me," Jake said with certainty. "He wants to prove that humans are weak, that I'm not worthy of marrying into the Imperial family. It's about honor for him. Will you be ready?" "I'm always ready. But I need you to do something for me. When the attack starts, get Lyra out. Don't wait for my signal. Don't try to help me. Just get her somewhere safe." Vextor nodded slowly. "You believe you might not survive this. I believe in planning for every possibility. And if it comes down to choosing between my life and Lyra's, that's not really a choice at all." The ceremony was held in the Grand Plaza, with thousands of citizens watching. The Emperor sat on his throne, with human dignitaries and alien ambassadors filling the seats of honor. Guards were everywhere, but Jake knew that determined attackers could always find a way through. Lyra walked down the ceremonial path, wearing robes that combined Caldronian tradition with human design elements. She was beautiful and terrified, but she held her head high. When she reached Jake's side, she whispered, "Are you ready for this? For the wedding or the attack?" "Both. As ready as I'll ever be." The ceremony began with traditional Caldronian prayers and blessings. Then came the human elements, words about partnership and commitment that Jake's people had spoken for thousands of years. The priest was just beginning the final vows when Jake heard something that made his blood run cold. A sound that didn't belong. The slight hum of charging weapons. "Down," Jake shouted, grabbing Lyra and pulling her behind the ceremonial altar just as energy bolts started flying. The plaza erupted into chaos. Guards rushed to protect the Emperor while guests screamed and ran for cover. Crosstar emerged from the crowd, weapon in hand, his face twisted with rage. "You don't deserve her, human. You have no honor, no traditions. You're a savage pretending to be civilized." Jake pushed Lyra toward Vextor, who had fought his way through the chaos. "Get her out of here now!" "Jake, no." Lyra started to protest. "Go, trust me." Vextor grabbed Lyra and pulled her toward a secured exit. She looked back, seeing Jake stand to face Crosshatar alone, and her heart clenched with fear. Crosshatar laughed. Finally. A proper challenge. Face me in single combat, human. Prove you're worthy of the princess. Jake could have shot him. Could have called for backup. Could have used any number of tactics that would have been safer and smarter. But he understood what was needed here. This wasn't about winning efficiently. It was about proving something to the Caldronian people watching. All right, Jake said, drawing his ceremonial blade. Let's do this your way. They circled each other while guards secured the perimeter. The Emperor watched from his protected position, fascinated. Crosshatar was bigger, stronger, and heavily armed with traditional Caldronian weapons. Jake had one knife and his wits. The first clash was brutal. Crosshatar attacked with the confidence of a trained warrior, his strikes powerful and precise. Jake dodged and weaved, looking for openings. He couldn't match the Caldronian's strength, so he didn't try. Instead, he used speed and unpredictability. When Crosshatar swung high, Jake went low. When the Caldronian expected him to retreat, Jake moved forward into his guard. It wasn't pretty or honorable. It was pure survival instinct. But Crosshatar was learning Jake's patterns. He adapted, started predicting the human's movements. A heavy blow caught Jake in the ribs, sending him sprawling. Another strike cut across his shoulder. From her secured position, Lyra watched through the video feed, her hands clenched. She saw Jake bleeding, saw him struggling against an opponent who outmatched him in every physical category. Then she saw something else. Jake wasn't trying to win through strength. He was making Crosshatar angry, frustrated. Every dodge, every unexpected move was designed to push the warrior off balance emotionally. He's fighting with his mind, Lyra whispered, not just his body. Jake rolled away from another strike and came up near the ceremonial decorations. He grabbed a metal rod from the structure, evening the odds slightly. Now he had reach and leverage. Crosshatar roared and charged. Jake sidestepped at the last moment, using the rod to trip the larger warrior. Crosshatar crashed into a stone pillar but recovered quickly. You fight like a coward, Crosshatar spat, using tricks instead of true skill. I fight like a human, Jake replied, breathing hard. We don't care about looking impressive. We care about going home alive. He attacked then, not with rage, but with calculated precision. Every strike was aimed at weak points in Crosshatar's armor, joints and gaps where the ceremonial protection was thinnest. The rod became an extension of Jake's will, probing and testing. Crosshatar blocked and countered, but Jake was adapting faster now. He had figured out the Caldronian's patterns, his tells. When Crosshatar shifted his weight before a big strike, Jake was already moving. When he pulled back for a thrust, Jake was inside his guard. The fight turned into something almost like a dance, brutal and exhausting. Both fighters were bleeding now, both showing signs of fatigue. But Jake had one advantage Crosshatar didn't understand. Humans were endurance hunters. They were built to outlast their opponents. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Crosshatar's strikes became slower. His breathing labored. Jake pushed harder, never giving him a chance to rest. The rod struck the Caldronian's knee, then his elbow, then his neck. Not killing blows, but painful ones that accumulated. Finally, Jake saw his opening. Crosshatar overextended on a desperate strike, leaving himself vulnerable. Jake dropped the rod, drew the knife from his boot in one smooth motion, and placed it against the Caldronian's throat. Yield, Jake said quietly. Crosshatar stared at him with hatred and disbelief. He had been beaten by a human using weapons and tactics he considered beneath a true warrior. I will not yield to a savage. Then die like a fool, Jake said, his voice cold. Your choice. For a long moment, the plaza was silent. Then Crosshatar dropped his weapon. I yield. Guards rushed forward to take him into custody. Jake stepped back, swaying slightly from exhaustion and blood loss. The Emperor stood and addressed the crowd. You have witnessed something extraordinary today. Captain Morrison fought not for glory or honor as we define it. He fought for survival, for victory, for the protection of those he cares for. These are the qualities that make humans formidable. These are the qualities I want in my family. Lyra broke free from Vextor and ran to Jake, catching him as he nearly fell. You idiot. You could have been killed. But I wasn't, and now everyone saw me beat him on his terms. Jake smiled weakly. Sometimes you have to play their game to earn their respect. That was not just playing. That was real. Yeah, it was. But it worked, didn't it? The ceremony was completed later that day, after medical droids had patched Jake up. It was smaller, quieter, with just close family and friends present. When the priest asked if they accepted this union, both Lyra and Jake answered without hesitation. I do. At the reception that followed, Lyra stood before her father and the assembled guests. She had insisted on making a speech despite protocol. When I first learned I would marry a human, I was terrified. I had heard the stories, seen the vids of human warriors in battle. They seemed like monsters from nightmare stories. I begged my father to choose someone else. Anyone else? She looked at Jake standing beside her with bandages visible under his formal clothing. I told him I was afraid of the human warrior. The crowd was silent, hanging on her words. But fear and respect are sometimes the same thing seen from different angles. What I feared was strength I did not understand, determination I had never experienced, the willingness to do whatever necessary to protect those who matter. She took Jake's hand. I am no longer afraid because I finally understand what I was seeing. Humanity's greatest strength is not their ferocity or their clever tactics. It is their refusal to give up no matter how bad things become. That is what we need in our empire. That is what I want in my life partner. She turned to her father. You were right to choose him, father. He will make me stronger, and through me perhaps our people will learn something valuable from his. Emperor Voshkal smiled, pleased. Well said, daughter. This alliance will benefit both our peoples. Months later, Lyra and Jake stood on the observation deck of a starship, watching the stars stream past. They were heading to a human colony world for a diplomatic visit, the first of many they would make together. Do you ever regret it? Lyra asked. Being forced into this marriage?